Warning! Before we start, viewers should be aware that this video contains some historical photos of before and after plastic surgery reconstruction that may be difficult to see. If you haven't had your lunch yet, we recommend eating first, then returning to give this episode a play. World War I. At the time, it was the most destructive conflict mankind had ever waged. The scale of the combatants was immense. The largest armies in history took to the field, and with them, they brought the full might of the Industrial Revolution to bear on each other. Modern industry created the deadliest weapons war had ever known, from machine guns capable of mowing down entire platoons of men to large-caliber artillery capable of raining high-explosive death at astounding rates of fire. Man and his frail flesh was put to hell itself. The same weapons that military leaders had hoped would bring about a swift victory soon ground the war to a creeping halt. Surveying the vast array of modern and terrible armaments at their disposal, few generals in Europe or anywhere else in the world believed that such a mighty clash between nations could end with nothing but rapid victory or defeat for one side. Yet these weapons proved as devastating on the defense as on the offense, and soon the war became a meat grinder. Victories measured in inches and fueled by raw human misery. Along with new weapons, though, World War I also saw a dramatic increase in man's medical knowledge. New surgical techniques were saving lives that were once impossible to save, and motorized ambulances allowed casualties to be quickly rushed to field hospitals. The figures speak for themselves. An estimated 15 to 19 million soldiers died in the fighting, while around 23 million survived their injuries. This marked a significant turn in human warfare, and now medical technology was saving lives at an unprecedented rate. New weapons, however, caused new injuries, and soon after the fighting started, soldiers were being rushed to field hospitals with horrifying injuries. High-speed shrapnel could sever men's limbs clean off or tear flesh away from the face, revealing the skull underneath. Incendiary munitions caused horrific burns across the body. Rapid-fire machine gun bullets shattered bone and ripped flesh to pieces. Lives were being saved, but the rate of horrific disfigurements was growing by the day. About 16% of the injured suffered injuries that affected the face, and of those men, a full third had disfigurements classified as severe. Given a lack of medical knowledge and surgical expertise, facial wounds were traditionally not treated, and men were forced to live out the rest of their lives with horrible disfigurements. This would not only destroy a man's social life and hopes for his future, but would also at times make it difficult to eat, breathe, or even just communicate. Into the scene enters Harold Gillies, a young ear, nose, and throat surgeon from New Zealand. When war broke out, he was enlisted into the British Royal Army Medical Corps and deployed into the 83rd Dublin General Hospital in Vimaru. There, he was assigned to supervise a younger dentist, Charles Valadier, who was attempting to surgically correct some of the terrible facial deformities British soldiers had suffered. Valadier had been born in Paris, but immigrated with his parents to America and became a naturalized citizen. He'd always had an interest in helping to correct deformities of the jaw, but prior to the widespread adoption of motor vehicles after World War I, there simply hadn't existed much of an opportunity to practice on patients. Major and survival facial injuries were simply too rare. When war broke out in Europe, though, Valadier got his chance to practice some theoretical reconstructive techniques he had mused during peacetime. By now, he was living back in France with his wealthy mother and sought to aid the war effort however he could. However, as he was not a French citizen, French authorities did not accept him into military service. He would instead get his chance when he offered to aid the British Red Cross Society in Paris. Valadier had himself supplied most of the equipment his small dental clinic used, and funded a dental laboratory in Paris that his technicians used to create the dental appliances he required for his operations. Given the extremely risky nature of his work, it was decided that Valadier should have the supervision of an actual physician, and thus Gillies was assigned to supervise Valadier's work. Soon, the two were working together on innovative and groundbreaking treatments to aid soldiers with terrible facial injuries. Gillies, however, realized that treatment of these deformities and the sheer number of them required a specialized facility, and thus he petitioned to supervisors to allow him to establish a specialized clinic to deal with facial injuries. He was given the go-ahead in January of 1916. He had set up Britain's first plastic surgery unit at the Cambridge Military Hospital in Aldershot. Gillies was soon looking for qualifying patients, though sadly, due to the extent of their injuries, many would not qualify for reconstructive surgery or were thought of being too weak to survive the grueling multiple surgeries required. Unhappily, Gillies would soon have his fair share of patients, as the opening of his plastic surgery unit coincided with the Somme offensive. Meant to herald a quick victory for the Allies, the Battle of the Somme was fought by more than 3 million men, with 1 million of them ending up wounded or killed. This in turn would make the Battle of Selma one of the bloodiest battles in all of human history, and would provide no shortage of patience for Gillies to refine his pioneering techniques. Soon, Gillies had over 2,000 injured soldiers to treat. Gillies was quickly employing and refining techniques that had been in use for millennia, especially forehead skin grafting techniques used for nasal reconstruction from ancient India. However, this could not even come close to adequately helping many of the war's wounded, who had suffered hugely disfiguring injuries. To aid these men, Gillies developed a technique known as tube pedicle skin grafting. In this technique, the surgeon slices a flap of skin from a healthy part of the soldier's body and then stitches it to a tube before suturing the end of the tube to the injured area. The skin thus remains alive and is given time to allow for new blood vessels to develop and the skin itself to begin growing and spreading across the injured area. After a few months to a year, depending on the scope of the injured area, the excess skin could be surgically sliced away, and patients could experience truly astonishing changes to their facial features. One of Gillies' greatest success came with the treatment of a man whose entire lower jaw had been blown off by shrapnel. The young soldier had been caught in an artillery bombardment, and the ensuing blast struck him on the side, ripping off most of his lower jaw. Surgeons had to break his jawbone and then saw the shattered jaw away, leaving him to recover with only the top portion of his jaw. Gillies, however, saw an opportunity where many saw tragedy. He began by cutting healthy skin from his shoulders and rolling it into tubes, which he sutured into the area where the lower jaw was missing. Then an artificial jaw was constructed and affixed to the patient's face. The skin tubes sewn to his face were then used to graft new skin over the artificial jaw, and after 2 years of surgeries and treatment, the soldier's injury was barely even noticeable. Truly, Gillies had worked a miracle of reconstructive surgery. Another man, this time a sailor, had suffered horrific burns to his face at the naval battle of Jutland. This sailor had had most of his face burned away, including his upper and lower eyelids, most of his nose, and his lips. The man was forced to wear a mask so as not to terrify onlookers, but Gillies soon went to work on helping to reconstruct his face. After 2 years of surgical procedures, Gillies managed to use the patient's own skin to graft new skin onto his face, including the construction of a brand new nose and, incredibly, working eyelids. Yet another miraculous healing by Dr. Gillies included that of a soldier who had been severely injured in the trenches at the Battle of Selma. Catching an 8mm machine gun round through the cheek, the bullet had devastated the man's lower jaw, blowing the man's mouth completely apart. Left without much of a jaw, no mouth to speak of, and no teeth, modern medicine nonetheless miraculously kept the man alive. But Dr. Gillies aimed to not just keep him alive, but restore as much of the man's face as possible. The first step was to create an artificial jaw to replace the shattered portions of the man's jaw that had to be removed surgically. This jaw would have to include both upper and lower teeth, as the man's entire mouth had been blown away. Next, Dr. Gillies used his tube pedicle technique to graft skin from the man's shoulders and neck across his devastated face. In time, not only was Dr. Gillies able to restore the man's jaw, but he even regrew the man's destroyed lips. Where a year or two before the man had no hope of a normal life ever again, now the only mark of his horrific wound was an obvious but slight disfigurement of his lower right jaw. At a time when crude tin or porcelain masks were all that a horribly disfigured soldier could hope for, Gillies and his team strove to fully reconstruct flesh and blood vessels. His goal was to try and regrow missing flesh rather than force injured soldiers to hide behind a mask for the rest of their lives. His pioneering work and the many opportunities to refine his technique thanks to the massive casualties of World War I made Gillies into the father of modern plastic surgery. Today, plastic surgery is still giving new hope to injured soldiers, and techniques have greatly improved. One notable success of modern plastic surgery includes U.S. Army Sergeant First Class Michael Shilts. Shilts was on a routine patrol when his Humvee ran into a roadside bomb. 3 soldiers were instantly killed, and only Shilts survived, albeit with burns over 85% of his body and the loss of his nose, ears, and both arms. Back in the United States, surgeons built Shilts a brand new nose from ear cartilage, bone from his skull, and skin grafts from his chest. They were also able to repair his eyelids and carried out skin grafts in the most severely burned areas of his body. Hopefully in the future, regenerative medicine will make plastic surgery obsolete, and injured soldiers will simply be able to regrow missing body parts or facial features. Already great progress in this new field is being made, and it's believed that in a few short decades, the fantasy humankind has long held of regrowing missing body parts will be a reality. For now, plastic surgeons continue to ply their trade on the world's wounded, giving hope to soldiers whose chances at living anything resembling a normal life were previously all but nil. While the psychological scars of war may never heal, at least modern plastic surgery offers a chance for the physical scars to be treated, and if not removed entirely, to be lessened in their severity. Do you think we'll ever be able to regrow missing body parts? Tell us in the comments. And go check out our other video, Why War with China Will Get You Drafted. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more great content.